I'm Margot Batha. I am your moderator for this evening. I'm a member of both AAUW and the League of Women Voters. I'm going to be ably assisted by two Hill Talkers, Karina Lanier and Luke Favorite. Karina will be moderating, will be timing you all for the speeches.
You should too.
Yeah. And then Luke will be assisting, keeping track of what's going on in the chat or with the hand raise function as people ask questions. We appreciate your attending virtually. I know this was a quick pivot today, but it's clear that we're all much safer by being at home. But we are grateful for this snow. We know how important that is. So we respectfully request a couple of things. Number one, please mute yourselves when you are not speaking. The reverberation and then sometimes what you are saying in the background can be heard by everybody. So we ask that you do that. We also ask that you keep your cameras on to the best of your ability. It's really hard for our representatives to speak to a sea of black boxes. We like to see your reactions and what's going on. We do know that can be a little complicated at times because of internet, but to the best of your ability would be wonderful. So today we are going to have three speakers, and we're going to begin with two of the three of our representatives in the legislature. Representative Leo Jaramillo, sorry about that. Senator Leo Jaramillo was unable to be with us tonight. He sends his deepest apologies. He is not well and really can't do this tonight. So if you have any questions for him, I know he would welcome an email from you. We do have with us, though, Representative Christine Chandler and Senator Roberto Gonzales. They will be both speaking as to what their hopes are for this legislative session, and then they will be open for questions and answers. Each of them will speak for 15 minutes. And then that will be followed by a Q&A session, as I said. So Karina, as I said, will be keeping time for that. If you wish to ask a question, please use the chat or use the hand raise function that is located at the bottom of your screen. There's a bar down at the bottom. There is a label that says reactions. Click on that and you will see the hand raise function in that. I think, and then finally, once we've spoken with our representatives, we're then going to turn over the program to Representative Susan Herrera, who will have 20 minutes to explain and changes that are being proposed for modernizing the legislature. She will also be taking questions and answers at the end of that. All right. So we're going to go alphabetically with Representative Chandler first. So Representative Chandler, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Good to be with you all and good to see most of you. Can you hear me all right? Okay, it looks like it's okay. Very good. So let's just start off so that we all have kind of the same basis of knowledge. This is a 30-day session. I know most of you know that, but there may be some newcomers to the call, and I just wanted to clarify. So it will start on January 16th and I think end on February, 16th or 15th. A short session means that the agenda is theoretically limited to budgetary matters, revenue matters, finances, things of that nature. And I think memorials are acceptable, and as are constitutional amendments. The last thing that's acceptable are items or bills that the governor puts on what we call the call, or to which the governor provides a message. So we're all scrambling right now trying to get messages for our bills. The governor has said that she plans on putting some gun safety legislation on the call, and I think there are going to be some crime bills on the call as well, and likely some other things, but I'm not sure exactly what those are. As many of you probably know, I am the chair of House Judiciary, and in a really perfect world, we'd have a light schedule, but it's not a perfect world. And I'm anticipating a very heavy schedule for House Judiciary, given the types of items that the governor has indicated an interest in placing on, having on her agenda. So gun safety legislation most certainly will come. Constitutional amendments often come. Election bills come to the committee. Often water bills. So I don't know if there'll be any water bills, but sometimes we get water bills to our committee if there are due process issues associated with that. I'm also on House Taxation and Revenue, and most certainly we'll be considering legislation that's going to be pertinent to the 30-day session. And I'll tell you about a couple of bills that I'll be filing in just a few minutes. But looking forward to the session. I do not think it's going to be, I think it's going to be very intense, given the nature of the number of the topics that the governor has identified. And I'm resting up for what I think will be a lot of energy in my committee. Let me just say, and I know some of you have attended House Judiciary, and when we have certain kinds of issues like gun legislation or gun safety legislation, there's a lot of participation by the public. Welcome participation, I would say. So I have a portfolio of bills. I'm going to highlight a few of them. Paid family and medical leave continues to be one of my priorities, and as well as Senator Stewart. She and I have been co-sponsors on that bill really for a number of sessions, and we have a few other very energetic and dedicated co-sponsors as well. We've been making progress on that legislation, and I want to thank the senator and my colleague, Representative Herrera, who have both supported the legislation as we've been presenting it to the legislature. We continue to refine it, and we have asked the governor to provide a message on the bill, and we are hopeful that such a message will be received. And we continue to work and educate people on the details, and I'm happy to talk with anyone about the substance of the bill, but essentially it provides a wage replacement opportunity and job protection for people who need to take off time to address serious illnesses, for the birth of a child, to care for loved ones who have serious illnesses. It would be operated by the state, and there are qualifications, you have to qualify and provide justification and a medical, justification for why you would be leaving. But that's the essence of the program. I also have filed with my friend and colleague, Representative Joy Garrett, a bill that is intended to refine and improve on the extreme risk protection order legislation that we enacted a few years ago. And you'll recall that's legislation that allows law enforcement to remove an individual's guns from him if they can establish that the person is likely to be a risk to himself or others. And then there's a process with the courts to evaluate whether there's sufficient basis to retain those guns for a period of about a year. And then there could be a reapplication, of course, if the threat is still, present. But we have found there are some things that need to be refined, and it's not law. And most of these changes are at the request of law enforcement, because they have found there are certain aspects that aren't workable or are cumbersome, and there's been an issue about who can be what we call a reporting party. So we have filed a bill to improve, and we've worked with law enforcement and the Attorney General to help refine that bill. I have filed a bill that I have done in the past, and it made it through the legislature but was vetoed by the governor last year, and that is reducing the capital gains deduction for many people, and that I'm anticipating we can get through the legislature again. There are very few states who do not tax capital gains as ordinary income. And I have a bill that will help facilitate the development of large-scale renewable energy storage, and that's a tax bill as well. And what it does is it would allow those types of very large projects, because it would allow freestanding renewable energy storage, not just co-located storage at a facility, to qualify for industrial revenue bond status. And that provides some certain tax advantages for investors in those kinds of facilities. And I'm also bringing back a bill that provides protections for individuals who are carrying student loans. There are a lot of abuses in the industry, and as to how student loans are administered, and it's essentially a consumer protection bill that will require those companies that are administering those loans to adhere to certain rules. It also creates an ombuds, so that people who are having difficulties sort of navigating their student loan world, to work with someone who can help them with the federal program, as well as other issues. And lastly, I am working with the Supreme Court on some bills that they would like to help, how do I want to say this, improve the functioning of the courts and improve the candidates that we get for the courts. There's been a concern that we are not getting sufficiently experienced in lawyers who want to be judges, because we don't pay well, or we need to improve on the benefits packages and those kinds of things. And I'll be co-sponsoring a bill with a couple of my colleagues to increase the salaries for the judiciary, and with the aim of trying to draw more people into wanting to serve in the judiciary. We are finding it's harder and harder to get candidates, and it's harder and harder to get experienced candidates, those that are maybe in their 50s or so, where they're, kind of at the top of their game, and they have a lot of experience, and they have a lot of experience in what we call civil law, contracts and complex security litigation and real estate. All of these things can be very complicated, and you need experienced judges, and we're finding harder and harder to recruit candidates and get people interested in wanting to serve. So the judiciary has put together a committee. I was on that committee, and we have a whole package of legislation that we intend to pursue this session, to the extent we get messages, and we will get messages on some of these bills, and then next year some more. But definitely we need to start working to improve kind of on the quality of what's going on in the court system. And I'll leave it at that. I will probably have a few other bills that I'm filing, but that's kind of the highlight of some of the things I'm working on.
All right, thank you, Representative Chandler. Senator Gonzales, are you set, Representative Chandler, for Senator Gonzales?
I'm done. Is that what you're asking me, Margo?
Yeah.
Done for now. Happy to answer questions.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds like a plan. All right, Senator Gonzales, the floor is yours.
All right, very well. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. First, I want to thank both organizations for having this. And, one of the best ways is just communication and being informed and working together. That's always a very strong effort, by everyone. And then I want to thank our two students that are helping us tonight. And thank you for your work. And, what an experience to do this kind of work, and to hear this, and how you can relate to this, and then also saying that you were in the debate team, so those are all pluses, but thank you again for that. I want to start off first just by a few things, so bringing it to the local level. And I have had a meeting with Los Alamos County, and then we have another one coming up in a week, and then so having discussions, and some with the laboratory of Los Alamos. So, that's immediately, that we'll be working, and they have given us the different items and priorities of how they see. Then also with Nambe, they're working on bringing in like a 200 rental facility. And I know that was very much to the effort to Los Alamos for being able to have housing for individuals that will be working or to be hired. So that's another one that we will be working again with the governor on that. With I thought I saw our UNM Los Alamos chancellor on the chat, and just what an appropriate time. Last year, through junior money, we gave some funding to buy snow removal, a brand new tractor, and he sent me a picture, so I'm sure they put it to work today. Oh,
We sure
now,
did.
yes, sure did, huh? Okay, well, very well. That's what it's for. I'm really glad to see that. Now, going into my part, a little bit more of giving you a little bit so that we're not repetitious to, some of the items that have been brought up by the representative. Is so my effort has been, I'm going to say probably the last 20 years, in really concentrating on the budget of the state, and the revenue. And to me, that is very, very important. And as we are today, we are doing very well. There's no question about that. And we are still at the part of, producing 1.8 million barrels of oil per month. And last year at this time, the sale to that was $100 per barrel. Now it's gone down to 70. So it's still, a very high revenue that comes to the state. But that's the way this kind of operation, this kind of business works. The other one is our rig count, and that's what brings the revenue. Is we're probably right a little bit under 100 rigs, which is very good for our state. Now, this is the part that I really want you to really listen carefully. In the last few years, our funding for education was at 2.2 billion. Within the last few years, we have raised that to 4.2 billion. Now, what's important about this is that this is recurring. So we have to maintain that level of revenue coming to the state. Otherwise, we have taken some safeguards and some safety mechanisms into putting some funding for, if we see the day that we decline drastically, that will carry us at least for 2 to 3 years. We do have the state revenues at 30% plus, and that is very healthy for our state. But again, if we were to have a downturn, we probably could hold on, to 2, 3 years, with that kind of level of funding. Then after that, we would really have to see, what would happen with that. Now, with higher education, the increase has not been as high, but it has been, and we have brought that from 1.3 billion to 1.4 billion. So this is important because with education, which is so important, then also addressing the Yossi Martinez lawsuit, which that has been the, very much why we have gone into a larger funding into our state. But we do have to remember that we have to be able to maintain the recurring part to that level. Now, challenges for our state, and whether we will see this, but even if it's a 30-day or 60-day, they just seem to come around. We have water, we have education, we have gun control, CYFD, infrastructure, our forest fires, so, you hate to sound more into, you want to work more positive, but, these are realities. These are things that we are facing and we're challenging. Now, on the positive side is we have seen how what the lottery and the opportunity scholarship has done, and then also that has raised, the enrollment at our higher education, which is very good for our state. So, keeping this in mind, we don't know actually until the day that we actually see the proclamation that comes out of the governor's office of what it's going to be presented and what we'll be working with. Now, the other bills, they have the challenge that they have to go through rules, and if they're approved as germane, they will continue with the process of following that. So, in working with this, we really see a very full agenda for the next 30 days. I will be probably, in an average, probably working with at least 10 pieces of legislation, maybe more. One important one is the motor vehicle excise tax, which the change here would be is the tax that is charged now would go directly to the Department of Transportation. And that's what we had before, several years back. And then you're in one of those shortfalls, that's when it was changed to that it went to the general fund. So that one, and then, we have the continuation of affordable housing, which I mentioned, also working with NAMBE on that, but also with a mortgage finance authority. Then another one that is very challenging, and I receive a lot of calls to this, is the New Mexico Health Care Act. That there's a possibility and introduction that the governor might want to change this into one of the departments right now itself, standing, but a possibility that a change in statute, that we're proposing that would keep it the same as the public retirement, PERA, and also with the education retirement, at the same level. So I will be also introducing several bills for the different agencies. And that's pretty much common, to all legislators, that agencies need, some work, or maybe sometimes it's just what we call it a fix, a technical fix in legislation that I will be working with. And with that, I'll just stop there, and then we'll see what comes with questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gonzales. So at this time, we can open the floor to questions. As I said, either use the hand raise function or post your question in the chat. We will do our best to take you in the order in which we see it, but it is a little more complicated. And you are limited to 1 minute for your question. Representative and Senator, you are limited to a 2.5 minute response each. And we will do that. We have a lot of time because we're missing a representative, but we do want to get to Representative Herrera as well. So we'll take those questions until a little bit past 8, depending on how that goes. Does that seem right to you, Ms. Orth, for timing?
Yes, Miss Batha. I'm looking for raised hands and I'm monitoring the chat.
Great. And I think my assistant Luke is as well. So feel free, if one of you could call on those people, because as I said, unless they're on my front screen, I'm not seeing them. So let us know. Feel free to ask questions.
There's one in the chat.
All right. So Ms. Clinton, do you want to repeat your question, or is it just fine that it's in the chat? Is that okay?
I'm good either way. So the question is for Representative Chandler regarding the staffing for the judiciary. Is that also applicable to court reporters as well?
I would say, I'm not sure I understand the question. We are not, the staffing is not part of the legislation that I'm working on. What we're working on is judges and salaries and benefit packages and things of that nature. We have been working to ensure that the courts are getting adequate funding, which would address the need for support staff and so on. And certainly it would include court reporters who are assigned to the courts.
Okay. So I'm gonna pull the string on that a little bit more.
Okay,
So, having been a court reporter and having had relationships with judges, I know that in the state of New Mexico, they only still use stenographic reporters and not voice, right? And my background is having been past president of a state that had both. So I think my question would be, when I think of staffing, is that something that maybe it can come up as a question down the road? Because if you have judges, you still need the court reporters for the record. So maybe we can look at broadening that aspect of staff personnel, because I know that they've always needed court reporters. There's always been a shortage.
sure, 100%. And we do try to provide as much support to the courts as we can, financial support and budgetary support. And they come to us with requests and we look to them for guidance as to what they need. And we try to make sure that their needs are met, for sure.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Okay.
Okay, questions?
Ms. Batha, I'm not seeing other hands raised and I'm not seeing, oh, sorry.
Yep.
Nancy Partridge in the chat. Question for Representative Chandler. Please share more details on the Family Medical Leave Act. Will this apply to cancer patients?
Yes, thanks for the question and thanks for the interest in the bill. It's very important. Certainly, a qualifying condition for which a person is eligible to take leave and have job protection and take leave up to 12 weeks for treatment would most certainly include cancer treatments. There's no question about that. Not only for the individual themselves, but if you have a family member who has needs and you need to assist them, then you will be allowed to take off that leave as well. So yes, most certainly cancer treatment would qualify as a qualifying condition. Thanks for the question, Nancy.
I do have one more question. And this is for Senator Gonzales. You mentioned that there were other agencies that you were working with. Can you speak to who those other agencies are?
Very well, thank you. One of them is with the tax department, and then also with the tax department, and then also with the Department of Transportation. That will be another one, and probably with Mortgage Finance Authority. Does that help?
Yes, and the Mortgage Finance Authority, that's going to be relevant to affordable housing.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, cool.
And the last few years, we have done very well with the legislation that was introduced, giving the legislature providing the 25 million that allows the Mortgage Finance Authority to basically, it's like a 3-to-1 that they're able to bond, for additional dollars to provide affordable housing. And I might say that the Mortgage Finance Authority is one agency that has done extremely well, and they have a very good track record. And you being in the committee, you see what's being presented, and the next thing you know, you're doing a ribbon cutting. So they're very effective and they really move forward. And the state is large, but it's a very strong beginning, because for many years we didn't fund them. They were just on their own.
Ms.
Thank you.
Batha, we do have a question from Carol Ann to either speaker. Do they know what items the governor is planning to introduce?
I might first, if you want to. It's one of those parts that it's the process, on how the session starts. And for our part, say on the Senate side, we will be having a caucus this Saturday, So by then, we probably will be seeing a lot more than what we have seen so far, to seeing what leadership has worked with the governor. But, I really foresee, that on the topics that I mentioned, is, that we will probably see legislation, that will cover to education, water, gun control, CYFD, infrastructure, forest prevention, forest fires. And I might say in all areas, we have made some very giant steps. Give you an example. For example, on the one on the forest prevention part, this coming year, we will be establishing for the state that actually belong to our state, not to another state. We will have 2 hotshot crews, and training centers. One training center will be in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and then the other training center will be in Socorro, New Mexico. And in my part, we probably should have 4 to 6 of this. But it's a very strong beginning, and this calls for each one having 2 crews, which it's approximately 26 members per crew. And this will be full-time jobs year-round that they will be working on, nothing but assisting with fire prevention. So it's a good beginning, that we are. And then this works very well also in conjunction with the United States Forest and also with BLM and many of the other agencies.
Thank you. The next question comes from Ms. Spector. After that, there'll be a question from Ms. Bruno. And after that, there'll be a question from Ms. Durkos. The question from Ms. Spector is, I was concerned to see that in the governor's executive budget, the proposed raise for K-12 education is only 3%. This would leave New Mexico unable to compete with neighboring states. What are your thoughts about raises for teachers in the context of recruitment and retention of educators and other staff?
Hold up one moment, please, Ms. Orth. I believe that Representative Chandler also needs to respond to the last question that was posed by Ms. Armbruster. So if we could, Representative Chandler, do you have a response before we take that other question?
Yes, I think most certainly there is going to be some gun safety legislation on the agenda. I believe that our ERPO bill will get a message that Representative Garrett and I are carrying. Things, waiting periods are likely, I think, to get message. There was a polling place bill that Senator Worth carried, prohibiting carrying of firearms in polling places. Unfortunately, that didn't make it all the way through the legislative process. There's talk of age limits for purchases of firearms. So I think that, and of course there's Representative Romero's bill, or perhaps someone else's bill, on assault weapons and regulating assault weapons additionally. So that for sure, and I'm expecting crime legislation, enhanced penalties, those kinds of things. I haven't seen specific bills as of yet, but I'm reasonably certain there will be some. There continues to be concern about retail crime, and so there may be additional enhancements associated with that.
Thank you, Representative Chandler. And now we'll take the question from Ms. Spector on the proposed raises for K-12 educators. It's in the chat. Of course, I could be very interested in that one myself. So if who would like to take the first response on that? Representative Chandler, do you want to go? Since
I'm happy to. I haven't followed what the House budget is going to be looking like, and it may be that Representative Herrera may know a little bit more about that because she's on LESC. My reaction to it is 3% does seem low. We've been doing really well these last few years in helping elevate teacher and other school employee staff salaries. And I do believe that we need to continue along those lines if we want to get maintain quality teachers and recruit and draw quality teachers in the state. I did hear from our local school representatives that when we bumped the salary ranges up, and then we provided some, pretty reasonable raises, we started to attract more people into the district. And I was hearing that from other school systems as well. So I think we need to continue to do that. There continues to be a shortage of educators and others in the schools, and I think salary is key to bringing them into the system. So I hope that's satisfactory, but I'll be asking our budget folks, our budget chair and so on, what we're thinking, and LESC, which Representative Herrera may be able to speak to.
Okay, Senator Gonzales.
Very well. I just want to start off by saying I was in education for 30 years, and I know very well, the need to have the adequate funding and to be able to attract, the different individuals for the different departments, different teaching, and also retention is so important. So yes, I see 3% very, very low, and we really need to work with that. And also, the important part is being able to keep it. So we have to make sure that what we work with. But the other part that that has been brought to our attention is there's a very high number of vacancies. So there is the challenge to fill these vacancies, and at the same time, making sure that we can work with that. And there's a lot of difference, with yesterday I spent almost half a day with school board members from Cuesta, and the difference in their opinion of what's happening with policy ruling making a 4-day versus going to 5 days, and the extra time. The other part is that I mentioned is we do have funding for teacher reach, and if you plan to attract or to hire someone, they have to have a place to live, a decent place to live. And there is funding for teacher reach, throughout the state. So they need to work with that. The other one that came out fairly strong was coming from them is more training for school board members. And they all see to where having that, definitely gives them the insight, of better decisions, better planning, and better work with their budgets. So we will be working with that and seeing that number when it comes to us. We will see what we can do to make sure that we can go higher with that.
Hey, thank you, Senator Gonzales. So the next question would be Ms. Prano, and then followed by Ms. Durkash, and then Ms. Detterman. And apologies for any mispronunciations.
Yeah, my question is for Representative Chandler. AAUW has done a lot of studying into debt issue, college debt being accrued, and it's topped. I think it's up to $1 trillion now, of which 2/3 is owed by women. And I'm wondering what aspects of the debt, what your consumer protection bill would address. I know one issue is making sure that those with that debt have a way to schedule repayment according to income available. And I'm just wondering what you what in yours.
Yeah. So glad the AAW's focused on that issue. It really is an incredibly impactful problem for people who are saddled with debt. And probably many of us on the call, maybe some of us had loans. I had law school loans and that kind of thing, but not nearly to the degree that what our young people and actually into middle age, because people are paying off these loans into middle age. It's incredible. So the federal government has a lot of authority over things like what you just raised, Judy. I mean, we're trying to operate within a narrow area that hasn't been preempted by federal law. Okay. So, because a lot of the student loan program and so on is addressed by federal law, and the states are precluded from engaging in that area. So it has a lot to do with requiring the servicers to notify the person, of, any extra fees, or if the loan's been transferred to another servicing agency, or also there are guarantors on these loans, so I'm imagining most likely parents who also are in debt on those loans, and ensuring that those guarantors on those loans, or co-signers, I guess you would call them, are getting the necessary information as well, so that they're not surprised should there be some default. So it really focuses on, kind of notice and responding to inquiries in a timely way, addressing concerns about, the lack of an accurate accounting, for example, and timelines and those kinds of things, because we are preempted on a large part of the federal, student loan program. So, and there is a movement across the country where student loan advocates are working with state legislators to, maneuver within that narrow field, but still provide additional protections for their constituents. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Senator Gonzales.
I lost you there for a little bit, but I think I can see what it was by the answers of Representative. First of all, I recall that when we started with a lottery scholarship, it took a little bit of time to get it across, to have the full support. Now, our governor has, one of the strong things that she wanted was to work with the Opportunity Scholarship. And the same thing, you always, anytime that it's something's new, it takes a little bit of time to push it. Now, one of the things that I see is our state is doing very well by having this. And I really would like to see it to where we go into the graduate program in offering assistance to that. So if you have assistance with that, then you have less debt because you don't pay for the tuition. And I think that would be something really strong for our state. Now, in working with that, but also seeing, what you're talking about, and I think what we need to do is work with some safeguards. As a state, we do provide you, say, relief with debt service. In return, what is the commitment? Is your commitment that you will be with our state 5 years, 3 years? Those are things that have to be done by policy, but I think they're important. Now, the other part is, if you really work with it, things can be done. And I'll give you an example. Is we have the BA-MD program, which is going on 20 years cycle now. That has been a great program for our state, to where, you recruit, you bring in, and you really do a lot of assistance with their tuition, with their work, the entire thing for their undergraduate and then their graduate program. And with the whole intention that these doctors come back and stay in our state, medical doctors. Now, if we can do that, we can do that with other fields, most definitely. And I think we do have a very successful, return, on our investment with the BA-MD program, to where we see this individuals staying in our state and becoming doctors, in different parts. Now, the other part that I think that is very important is in working with this is, how do we make it to where it can also be attractive to the rural areas?
Okay,
you know.
Senator Gonzalez, I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you. Your time is up, and we're going to move to the next question from Ms. Durkash. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
It's Dervis. Thank you. So I'll address this first to Representative Chandler. Are there any plans to reintroduce the minimum wage or increase? And if so, is there any hope of its passage?
Thanks for the question, Denise. I don't plan on introducing it, and I haven't heard of anyone else likely to introduce it this year. I think it would be unlikely that it would get a message, to be honest with you. It's quite an experience to carry a minimum wage bill, which you all may be learning. It brings out an emotional response that I really was not prepared for by some segment of mostly the business community, but I suppose possibly other areas. And it seems to develop a life of its own, which you and the other counselors may soon learn. So I know of no plans this year for such a thing, and I doubt it would get a message, frankly, given the short session and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Senator
Senator
Gonzalez.
Gonzalez.
29 years ago, that was the first bill that I introduced, and talk about growing up fast, you know, with the challenges that come with that. And again, 30-day session is very compressed. You know, the first week goes by so fast, and before you know it, the second week you're at midterm. And it's something like this is definitely more of a 60-day challenge.
Okay. Thank you both.
Okay, question from Ms. Detterman. And Ms. Detterman, I can read this out if that's okay with you, or do you want to mention it yourself?
You do it.
Okay, thank you. To both representatives, do we have any status on the PED proposed changes to school hours and days requirements for our school districts? Yeah, and I would be interested in that answer myself.
As probably many on the call would, and probably a bunch of parents out there too. Shall I answer? I'm sorry, I just jumped in.
I would like both to answer.
Yeah, Senator, do you want to go ahead of me? I didn't mean to do that. So. Okay, well, I'll answer. There's, well, my sense in speaking with the governor, or at least being in on a meeting where this topic came up, is it seems like PED is very committed to what the rules that they have alluded to in terms of days and so on and so forth. At least on my side of the legislative branch, I know there are a number of House members, actually, and Senate members too, because I was at an LFC meeting where this topic came up, who are very disappointed, I guess would be one way to say it, in the approach that PED is taking. I think there's a concern that it exceeds their what they're planning, if indeed what comes to fruition may be outside their authority. The legislature passed a bill last year, I'm sure you're aware of that, as are many on this call aware of it, a number of whom I spoke with at the time to get guidance on what the preference of the school district was and so on. And that, I believe, is the bill that passed, and that is the bill that should be implemented. That, you know, there could be some real stress, I think, between the legislature and the governor on this particular point. So I hope that answers your question. It's not a definitive answer, but my sense is PED is still committed to the approach that they announced, I don't know, several weeks ago.
Well, first of all, you know, to give you an answer on this, definitely need more than 2.5 minutes. Is, you know, when I was in school, I wanted to be in school, you know, and I know that that's a big gap of years. And now, addressing our high absentee and addressing with, I still say wherever you have parent involvement, you have success. It doesn't matter what grade, what level, college, doesn't matter. And we need to win these people over, not fight with them. The other part that I encountered just especially this last week, I had some parents just point blank. If we have, if our children cannot go to the setting that they had, we'll transfer to a charter school or we'll transfer to a private school. Then there was a teacher that I talked to from Las Vegas, New Mexico, and she commutes to Springer, to Wagon and on a 4-day schedule. And she said, if I have to go to 5, I just won't go. I'll just resign. So we have to be sensitive to all these things. The other part that I always look as an education is I always remember the real strong commitment from Mr. Gilbert Martinez, who was a director for Title I in those days for years and years. And he said, I don't care what you do, as long as the children learn and as long as you can teach, so different things work different, in different areas. And then again, you need that support of the parents. You can't have, create a situation to where you basically, not bring them in. So there's a lot of work to do that, but I think there's a lot of difference too in understanding what is a statute versus a policy that is being done by the department. And I think for our part, I feel as a legislator, when we have a statute and then a policy comes in a lot stronger or with a different view of what we were seeing, that's not the answer.
Thank you so much. And as the Director of Inclusive Schools in Los Alamos, New Mexico, and listening to every minute of those testimonies and debates, I truly hope you all represent teachers, educators, custodians alike, and allow us the equity to run schools the way we see fit with the PED as our leaders. So thank you for your response, and please let them know that we're all waiting their response, and we're hoping that they will do equity like they want us to do with our students. That's it.
Thank you. My able assistants, Ms. Orth, Luke, are you seeing any other questions? We have time for one more question.
I'm not.
Luke, are you seeing anything?
We have Judy Prono's hand is raised. I'm not sure if she intended to have it still raised or not, but that's all I see.
Okay. All right, Judy, did you have another question? No, it was an error. Okay, I've done that. We all have.
Nope, no question. I just didn't put my hand out.
Understood. Any further questions? Because as I said, we do have time for one more. If not, we'll move along to Representative Herrera's presentation unless I hear any further questions. All right, I think we're clear. Assistants, are we clear? Okay, all right. So Representative Herrera, you have 20 minutes to explain the changes proposed for modernizing the legislature. If you would begin, that would be great. Thank you. Representative Herrera, we are not hearing you.
Oh, okay. How's that?
Perfect.
All right. I'm in. I apologize to everybody. My internet is down. So I am talking to you over a cell phone. And so that's why the picture's a little blurry and my hand is waving. So I will try to keep it steady for the presentation. And I'd like to thank the league, and I'd like to thank all of you for joining and for taking part in this discussion. I always learn a lot in these kind of things, so it's very helpful to me. I worked, I would say, for last 4 years really on working with a group of women, and we were trying to modernize the legislature. And what does that mean? That means that we would like to see a paid legislature. We'd like to see longer sessions. To do an $8 billion budget in 30 days is a bit much, and also to have paid staff. I mean, we are the last state in the union that doesn't pay legislators, and it really isn't fair. I used to say it wasn't fair to legislators. I now say it's really not fair to the people of New Mexico. I think the citizenry deserves a professional legislature, people that are paid to do the job. And a lot of people just don't even, most people think we're paid at about, we did a poll, most people think we're paid at about $70,000 a year. We are paid nothing to do this work. I just want everybody to understand that. I have to raise campaign money. All of us have to raise campaign money. Chris, Senator Gonzales, we have to raise campaign money to do our job. So my district, for many of you, if you don't know, I go from the Santa Fe Rio Arriba border line all the way to the border of Colorado and New Mexico. I go over the Los Brazos Pass up into Taos, and I go to the left up into Cuba. So my district is about the size of Massachusetts. So if I go to a meeting in Chama, I drive 2 hours, that's windshield time, right? Meet for 2 hours and come back. So a couple of meetings in Chama is an all-day experience. And the same can be said for the senator and Chris. They have big districts too. I probably have one of the largest districts. So it is really, I think, impossible to do the job that we know we'd like to do. I always feel like I'm behind. No matter what I do, no matter how much I work, you can't keep up. And so my job, so we have like 3 parts, a paid legislature and session length. Those are constitutional amendments. That will have to go to the people for a vote. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think that'll probably happen in a 60-day session. I think people are getting stronger about it. I don't think it's going to happen this session. I think they will be introducing it. Whether or not it will pass, we'll see. I think it, and Senator Gonzales can speak to this. I think it would pass in the House. I'm not sure that it would pass in the Senate at this point in time. I'm in charge of staffing. And so what we had come up with in the staffing realm is that we would have a part-time staff, 20 hours a week for a part-time legislature. Okay, I think that is kind of a good compromise. And it would be different. We would have a district staff. This person would be hired and fired by the legislatures. They would work in a district office. We would have money for a district office, for a phone for the staff, for equipment, a printer, a computer. I mean, it's a little embarrassing, but the people who have staff, those people have to bring their own phones and their own computers to the job. So we don't even provide for the staff that we have now that work for like the majority leader. It's a little strange. I ran the Lano Foundation for 17 years, and my job, and I'm sure, Chris's job, and I know Senator Gonzales' job is the superintendent. You need to make sure that the people that work for you have the equipment to do their job. So that's also part of a paid staff. I think we have money in the budget if people will pass this. Again, I think we have the House vote. Mimi Stewart is carrying it on the Senate side. That's always good. And I'll be carrying it on the House side. That will be wrapped up into House Bill 1. We do not have to go to the people. It's really a function of the House because it's not in the Constitution. So we can designate ourselves a staff member, and the people and the money to pay for that. That would, which is what they call the kind of the feed bill. And that's the bill that pays for all the expenses of the legislature. Okay, it's not a House Bill 2, which is Senator Gonzales was talking about. So House Bill 1 comes up. It's usually the first bill we pass. And we'll see. We haven't done a whip count yet. I think we've got it on the House side. I just am doing that, but the leadership of both houses seem to be in favor of it, and I think that works in our favor. So that's really pretty much it. I wish I could give you a whip count on it. I wish I knew for sure that it was going to happen. We did get the money last time to do a study, and we did a study, and they came back, and we looked at that, each member hiring and firing their own person, and establishing a district office will work. If people want to join offices, they can, like probably Leo Jaramillo and I might have a joint office at Northern. I mean, we could do that, but that will be up to each individual to decide whether they want to do that in their district, what makes sense in their district. And then I want to say that I have another modernization bill, but it's not it. We're just writing this now. Sometimes you do bills for people to just begin thinking about it. Our legislature, I think, is also very weak because we don't have committee staff that follows us year round. If you're a member of the LFC, the Legislative Finance Committee, or the LESC, the Legislative Education Study Committee, those staffs work year round. That's by statute. They work year round and they follow the members. What happens though is money policy is developed around money with the LFC. And we have committees, like I'm chair of the Agriculture, Acequia, and Water Resources Committee. My staff in the interim, we kind of go into the Conservation Committee, but it depends how the speakers want to set up the interim committees. If you have a standing policy committee, I think that staff should monitor the work during the interim and then follow that committee into the full session, work with them. Right now, those people who work in interim committees go back to the legislature and they turn into bill drafters during the session. They don't follow you with policy recommendations. And again, staff is a really important component of the work that we do. And I think if we had policy staff year round, it would strengthen the policy agenda of the legislature. So I'm just saying that that's going to happen. My big issues, as the senator and Chris were talking about, water is probably the most important work I do. We have the Water Trust Board. They have $150 million to give out this year, but water projects, it's amazing how much they cost. And for those of you who don't know, most of our water infrastructure was done right after World War II. So these systems are about 75 years old. The pipes in the rural districts, they're leaking, they're not connected right. We need better systems. We need tons of money for infrastructure. We have the Water Trust Board has approved $300 million in grants. They only have enough money to provide $150 million. So there's legislation to bump that budget up to $300 million, and that would cover all that. $150 million right now only covers the top 4 cities in the state, their water projects. That's how expensive they are. Like Santa Fe is $80 million. The next 150 would cover all these small rural water projects that are desperately needed throughout the state. And so I think that's in the budget. I think there's a good chance of us going up to $300 million on that. And I am also a member of the LESC, and we are doing a bill on school board governance, so that people get a certain amount of training and specific issues. The PED would take care of that. They would have to do that before they start being a school board member, so that they would get that training quickly, as soon as they're elected, so that when they step into that role as a school board member, they would have at least a rudimentary amount of training that they need to really do the job. And that's going to be an important piece of legislation. And then we have, I also have school board campaign finance reform. Right now, there's only like 4 districts that have to report where their money comes from if they run for school board. So we would ask that they have to report their campaign finances. If they spend more than $1,000 a year on a campaign, they would have to report their finances too. So that's happening too. Another important piece of legislation that I think I'm carrying is we need to help our whole state pull in these federal dollars. And so I'm trying to get all of the COGs, the Council of Governments, at least $400,000 a year. We have 7 of them throughout the state. A lot of us combined efforts, including Senator Gonzales and Chris, we funded the North Central COG with 400,000, and that turned into, in 1 year, grant applications of 62 million. That's how important it is, because what they could do is they could hire local grant writers to help these small villages, cities, governmental units write grants. And I just think that's imperative. We have all this federal money coming in. I've been a grant writer for years. We have all this federal money coming in, but if you don't have good grant writers that know how to get that job done in a meaningful way, and then also how to monitor a grant once you get it, that's another huge challenge for small local units of government. So I will stop there. I have more things I'll probably carry, like Chris and Bobby, Senator Gonzales, and Representative Chandler. I'll probably carry about 10 bills. Another really important bill that came up today is we need a meat packing and inspection plant in the state of New Mexico. We have to send all of our meat out of state, have it butchered, and then we have to bring it back in. So NMSU has the ability to do this. We have all the work. It didn't pass last session. It should have passed. It didn't get through Senate Judiciary at the last minute. I think it's primed to get through this year, and I'll be carrying that legislation too. So I'll stop there. I think people have a lot of questions, or not. But that's kind of my role. I'm the top is that staffing issue, and those water project, that money, getting the appropriations done. I think those are my priorities. And then, just going down the other things that, this is, I always tell people, this is the only job that gets harder the longer. Usually you get a job, first year's hard. Second year, you kind of improve it. Third year, you kind of own it, right? Not this job. It gets harder every year, because what you do is you get more responsibility, and then you have to carry more things. I don't know how Senator Gonzales does it after what? How many years, Bobby, do you have? 25? I don't know. Anyhow, these jobs get harder because you're given more responsibility. You have to take care of things, and you have to follow through on them. So I'll quit there. Thank you very much.
29 years.
Perfect segue, Senator.
See?
You're up for the question. We saw your hand raised, and you're up first. If there's anyone else, please put either the hand raise function or put your question in the chat for Representative Herrera. And the other representatives can also chime in if she's answering something that you feel that you have expertise in. You'll be on that same 2.5 minute response for that. So just let us know whether you wish to respond or not.
I really don't have a question. I just wanted to add a little bit to her presentation.
Great.
And there's been a lot of members that have tried to work with this about paying legislators and addressing some of the issues that were brought by Representative Herrera. But there's three things that are very important. Is number one is where we are today and how it is. We really discriminate a lot because you have to be wealthy or retired, or you would have to have a very good employer that would allow you the time to serve. So, in those bases, through the years, I have seen a lot of individuals that start off and then they leave because they just can't afford it. The other part is because we're 30 days and 60 days, it becomes staff driven instead of legislative driven. It becomes staff, and it's not their fault. That's the system we have. They're the ones that are there. And after 30 days and 60 days, we're gone. The other part is, as it was mentioned by Representative Herrera, it really doesn't give us the quality for research. We have to depend. And again, it goes back to staff. So those are some very key things also that are very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. And what I tell everybody is it's not this governor. Any New Mexico governor has too much power. Okay. State agencies have too much power. Lobbyists have too much power. The people closest to the people really have the least amount of power. That's why I say our system is not fair. It's not fair to our New Mexican citizen. That's why we really need to reform this system so that the people closest to the people, we have to stand for election every 2 years. And I am fine with that. But we need the tools in place to really do an effective job for our citizenry.
Representative Chandler, do you want some time on that?
Hold on. Yes. I fully support the efforts that my colleagues have been engaged in for these last, frankly, Senator Stewart will say she's been bringing legislation probably for 20 years on. There's been legislation and proposals on this for quite some time. They gain momentum, and I think now we're in a place where it really truly is gaining momentum. We have the support of House leadership and Senate leadership on these initiatives, and I think that's very important. Maybe to lighten the conversation a little bit, I was talking to somebody today about how I'm trying to schedule something with a bunch of legislators and an agency, and I'm like, I need support. Here I am. I'm getting ready for a legislative session, and I'm doing scheduling. And I'm not a good scheduler, so I'm going to start calling my administrative self, that part of my personality, Christy. And Christy is not a competent admin. But the chair of Judiciary will not fire her because we're related. And I'm going to call my bill analyst, Chris. Because that's my other persona that I have to do that I don't get paid for. I'll do that. And then I'll do my legislative work, and that I guess will be Christine. So there are 3 personas that I'll be presenting throughout the year and throughout the session. And Christy is the least competent of them all. But it takes a lot of time just to try to get people together in a meeting that I am scheduling for legislative business. So just keep that in mind when you see us all kind of frazzled and we didn't get back to you fast enough on our emails, and because I get some feedback that's not always complimentary. It's all of these jobs that we're all juggling these jobs. Christine, Chris, and Christy. So you get a lot for your money. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. We have a question from Nancy Partridge. Is the governor in support of a professional legislature? So I'm going to take this alphabetically. We'll go Representative Chandler, Senator Gonzales, and then Representative Herrera. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes, and I'm going to defer to Representative Herrera because she's had the most engagement on that particular issue.
Representative Herrera.
You're on mute.
Okay, now I'm okay. The devil's in the details. I think the governor personally is for it. We don't need her vote. Actually, a constitutional amendment, if you have it goes directly from both houses to the people. So that's what you need. We will need her in the future. I think she knows that we need to change, and I think she knows we need to modernize. And I think when we finally lay out exactly what it's going to be, I think she's going to support it, because I think she knows New Mexico needs this. But I don't know, Senator Gonzales, what do you think?
I missed the question at that time. I was also
Oh, no
using the
problem.
internet.
Is the governor in support of a professional legislature? Is the question.
To my part, I would say yes, most definite. And we see that, as it was mentioned, more awareness and just bringing more education. But again, is what can this 112 members deliver to the public of the state of New Mexico? And that's the important part. I think another one that I see, and I've always felt for years on this, because as it was mentioned, quite a few of us had carried legislation on this, is we won't really have an action until, I feel, until we crash, and then the overall public is going to react, and, we need to do something. And we're very close to that because of the load of carrying that amount of budget to what we have to do, and then not including Medicaid. Between both of them, you're looking at very much to like $16 billion, that we're trying to funnel through in 30, 60 days. So, and that did happen one year, where we finished the session and we came out without a budget. So then we had to be called back on extraordinary session to basically fix it. And that's almost equivalent to Washington when they don't come up with a budget, that they just postpone it and then just build it up again. But we definitely need to do something. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from Judy Prano. Judy, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'm hoping to avoid the crash. I'm just wondering what we as individuals or as groups, as AAUW and the League of Women Voters, what could we do to motivate, to push along the idea of both the paid legislature and longer sessions, which I totally agree we need. Are there steps that we can take to get this moving faster? And it's a question for anyone.
Yes, I would love to answer that. I think op-eds would be really helpful, for you as organizations to take a strong stand and to support that and back that, and to talk. I mean, I think you're all from Los Alamos, so but to spread that throughout the state. We need people from your organization in every part of the state to talk to their legislators about the need for that, and to make it safe for all legislators to vote for that. There will be a group that say, oh, we don't need that, and it's too expensive, and we shouldn't do it. But I think if we have support at the local level all over the state, that is what makes the difference. That's what really moves the legislature.
If I could add, I mean, I agree with everything that Representative Herrera said on this, elevating the issue so that it's really part of the public discourse and making people aware. Um, it, there's gonna, as she said, there's a segment of our legislature who will never support this. And there's a segment of our population who are perfectly happy to have gridlock and not a lot of policy initiatives, frankly. And I'm sorry to say that, but there is some percentage of both chambers, I think a small percentage, and I think this is doable. These things are achievable through our legislative process. But it's fascinating when I hear people talk about, well, we are engaged in public service, and they're usually wealthy people. And we're doing it for the public service. Well, of course, everyone on this call, my two colleagues, are doing it for public service. There's no question about that. But I think that it's very short-sighted to think that people are engaged in public service. Like teachers, for example, you all are engaged in public service, and we want to compensate you well because we want quality teachers engaged in the work. Well, we're engaged in public service, no doubt about it, and we want quality people with a wide, income range and age range and race age range to be able to participate in the legislative process. Well, to do that, we do need to pay legislators so that everyone has the opportunity to participate.
No, let me say, for example, our two young individuals that are assisting us tonight, why shouldn't they have an opportunity to serve? As many others, throughout the state. And why should it be a deterrent because they can't afford it? They should be allowed that. We need that young blood, and we need that kind of environment, that kind of culture, to build. And, that excitement and that energy, it's healthy. The other part is just being able to have the adequate time to work with this. Now, where you see the part that there's vetoes, a lot of them is just because the legislation didn't have enough time to really be fully developed, and maybe another extra 5 days, 10 days, 15 days makes a big difference. So also just look at 2024, and we're operating on what was proposed in 1912. That's a long time ago, to where no computers, no anything. And just to tell you how strong our Constitution is, on the per diem mileage, we are only allowed one trip throughout the session that we're paid, because that's how it was in 1912. So definitely needs, call it an overhaul, whatever, but bringing in that into to be able to see what our other states are doing and how they operate and what benefits it brings them, to be able to have that opportunity here in our state. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from Ms. Partridge. She asked, what are the specific arguments against it? I assume that means changing the way the legislature works. Is that correct, Ms. Partridge? Okay, so if we could get some of the, okay, great. So is there a legislator who would like to jump into that, or should I go alphabetically?
I will, that's fine. I think the perception, I think we finally are opening that door to where there was a perception for years and years. People thought we got paid, that then we're allowed 2 license plates, but they're not free. We pay for them. You pay what it would be to register your car. And because they have that plate, they think that the state bought us those vehicles, and things like this, that have been, throughout the years. But I think we have really brought a big awareness, now for many years, we weren't that competitive with federal funds. We have become more competitive, which that also takes a lot of manpower and, to implement and to process, this kind of programs. So, the part is just understanding how it works. And if they could really see that, it does discriminate and it does become staff driven because we're not that available at the. Sorry, I lost you there for a while.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
All right,
Representative
Representative
Herrera,
Herrera,
Chandler.
Sorry
Sorry about the echo.
echo.
Yeah, let me. Well, I alluded to one of them. I don't know how many times I've heard this. I'm a public servant and, thing, and this is all about public service. That has come up. I think issues related to cost occasionally come up, that kind of thing. And I do want to supplement one answer that Senator Gonzales brought up, and that is, yeah, we are certainly very dependent on the staff who, in a sense, work for us, but they don't really, because they work for an organ like LFC staff works for the LFC director. We have a director that does our bill drafting. That's the legislative council. They're not really direct reports for us. So, it's not exactly a direct relationship. So we don't have access in the sense that, someone who directly worked for me understands my political and policy philosophy. I don't have that. But in addition to staff, it's the lobbyists too. I mean, because we don't have the ability to have direct policy support on a lot of initiatives, the lobbyists have a lot of influence as well. And it's very hard to discount sometimes some of the arguments they make in committee or offline in our offices and so on, because we don't have access to and the ability to get information quickly. So I just want to make that point as well. I didn't answer Nancy's question very directly, but I did want to supplement some of the conversation about this, I think, very important issue.
Representative
Yes.
Herrera.
Yes, and what I would like to say is that the job is just overwhelming, and we need help. I mean, if you're a professional in any walk of life, you would have a support staff helping you. I mean, and we're just asking at this point for one part-time staff, but that would make a huge difference. Scheduling, going to a meeting for us. Sometimes I have conflicting meetings. I'll have one in Chama and one in Española at the same time, and they're both really important meetings. And I have to rely on friends or volunteers and call them up and say, will you go to this meeting and will you tell me what's happening, what's going on? And you just can't run a good office, and you can't run a good organization without that kind of support. So I don't think we're asking for a lot. We'll probably, the pay will probably be, I think it'll be somewhere between probably, I'm going to just say 30 to 50,000, but those details haven't been worked out either. And I think we're just going to have more deeper conversations with the details and lay out that budget so that everybody knows exactly what they're getting. I mean, I think we've taken care of that in staffing. The sessions, some people are calling for 2 45-day sessions, some are calling for 2 60-day sessions, and some are calling for 2 90-day sessions. So we'll see how that evolves. And I think you'll see that legislation come to the forefront, not this year, but in 2025.
Thank you.
It's me.
I unfortunately, Representative Herrera, hopefully you can catch your breath There, there's a question from Mr. and Ms. Dunn. Representative Herrera, when your offices are understaffed, do lobbyists, and in parentheses, by definition biased, in parentheses, provide, quote, research, unquote, for you? Is the oil and gas industry the biggest, best funded of lobbyists?
Yes and yes, and what you have to do is you have to understand, a lot of us, especially newer legislators, you tend to follow the people you trust. Okay, I can't be an expert in every realm. I'm not an expert on oil and gas. I'm not an expert in judiciary. I look and see what Chris is doing in judiciary. I probably am deeper. I know a lot more now about water. I know a lot about education. And I think people kind of follow me on some of those issues. So we depend on each other a lot because we have no staff to rely on. And, lobbyists, a good lobbyist will be very truthful with you. And they'll also tell you what's wrong with their position. I'll say, so what's the other side going to say? And a good lobbyist will give you that information. And I must say, a lot of our lobbyists, they're really good people. They're making a living too. I get it. But you always have to take that information with a grain of salt. And you have to, you take campaign contributions because you need it. I was very careful, about putting in my own money when I ran. I didn't loan it to myself. I put it in because I always wanted to look a lobbyist in the eye and say, look, look, I put just as much money as you could have possibly put into my campaign and a lot more. And I'm working full-time year-round without pay. So, I don't really owe a lobbyist anything. I go to them for information if needed, but I know exactly what they're representing and why they're representing. So, and I vote against half the time I vote against them, and sometimes I vote with them. That's just how it goes.
Thank you, Representative.
I hope that answered the question.
Representative and do you have any response?
I mean, I don't know who the most best funded lobbyists are. I certainly, oil and gas industry has adequate income to hire a good number of lobbyists, and there are certainly a good number of lobbyists that support the oil and gas industry at the legislature. In terms of, do we rely on their information? I take all information in and then do my best to evaluate it in as skeptically as I can. And I think those of you who know me, and I know a number of you on the call, know I'm annoyingly skeptical. And I'm quite certain I annoyed the county staff endlessly when I was on the council with all these kind of skeptical, inquiring questions. And that's just a personal style of me. I don't know if it's because I went to law school, although I think I was that way when I was like 10 years old. So, but so they know I am very inquisitive, and I push them on what they claim their facts and data and perspective is. But it is hard when you don't have a quick way to go validate yourself. You don't, and not everybody has a skill set where they can kind of drill down with sort of an inquisition type inquiring. Really, not people don't have that skill set, and some people think it's impolite, so they don't want to do it. But you have to really press them. But I will say the lobbyists, I call them the lobbyist class. The lobbyist class, does carry a lot of weight in the legislature, and I'm seeing that now with paid family and medical leave. They are all over that bill, all over it, and they provide a lot of misinformation about it. I'm not sure even all of them have read it, but they're engaged in all kinds of scare tactics on the paid family and medical leave, like it's gonna, do X, Y, Z, and we won't have any staff available and so on. So I'm digressing yet a lot, but I've been spending a lot of time correcting people on information they've received from lobbyists on a bill that I know very well. So we all have to be very skeptical, and it's hard when you don't have the ability to go double check real fast.
Okay, Senator Gonzales.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Just adding to what has been mentioned, I always look at this. Well, first of all, you know, in my time, I think one of the worst feelings as a legislator is when you know that you didn't vote right. And so why did you not vote right? You know, but when you try to imagine, you know, sometimes we get very compressed with 2,500 bills, and especially at the very end, and you know, it's like a funnel when they're all starting to come in. And I always look at a lobbyist as, you know, what are the pros and what are the cons? And they know very well that if they cross that line and they don't tell you the truth, you know, they'll come again. You know, if they're going to continue lobbying, you know, that's their job, you know. So, you know, they have to provide you with that. And so many times, you know, I have come afterwards and they, with a comment as, well, you voted for it. And that's true, I did. But, you know, that's why you have to really get that part of sensing, you know, especially when you don't have the expertise on these areas, you know, to really depend on some of these individuals. And, you know, they get paid well. And, you know, if they are, you know, that is their judiciary part, is to provide us with the best information that we can do for us for our decisions. So, you know, that's part that, you know, as time goes on, you get to sense this and you know how to work with it. And that's what we have, you know, it's a lot of times it's just overwhelming, you know, on the compressed information that's coming to us. Thank you.
Thank you all. Are there any further questions for our legislators at this time? My faithful assistants, is there anyone we've missed? Luke, Ms. Orth?
I don't see anyone.
Okay, Ms. Orth?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So if there are no further questions, I think that we are ready to conclude our Zoom session. So I want to thank again our legislators for appearing and explaining the bills and what's coming up for us in the legislative session, and also to the AAUW and the League of Women Voters for their sponsorship of this. Thank you so much.